United States announced a new round of sanctions against North Korea today. The sanctions will block any transfers or dealings with North Korean ships, 16 individuals and 9 companies. The United States is accusing them of helping Kim Jong-un's weapons program. Joining me for more on this is Saurabh Gupta, a policy specialist for the Institute of China-America Studies. Saurabh, nice to have you with us.
Thanks.
You surprised by these sanctions, this move?
No, I'm not. They've been going against anybody and everybody who's been trying to aid North Korea. The enforcement has been really bolstered, including maritime interdiction and any ship-to-ship transfers. So I think this is not a surprise at all.
Is this begging for a confrontation on the high seas?
It could, although it does have UN authorization. Now, what the UN resolution says is that you can go against commercial vessels, not against state vessels. So these are not North Korean vessels, North Korean state vessels, and they have the right to interdict these vessels. Of course, most of the interdiction has been happening at ports, but they're doing it at the high seas also now.
The fact that individuals, 16 individuals are being pointed out, taking action against them is an indictment. I don't know how else you could look at it. This is kind of a new level of sanctions now, isn't it?
It is a new level of sanctions, but this is going mainly after facilitators. The aim out here is actually to shine the light on China, that you have these characters on your soil who are facilitating actions. So this is just to give that little additional push to the Chinese to enforce a little harder.
Does it come at a very delicate time? The North and South are speaking. They're doing some cultural exchanges with the Olympics. Could any of that be in jeopardy from the standpoint of Kim Jong-un and blame it on the United States?
No, I don't think so. I don't think these sort of actions will put that in jeopardy. What was of a greater magnitude was the U.S. during this phase of inter-Korean reconciliation wanted to send one of its nuclear attack submarines to one of the South Korean ports. That is something which obviously triggers anger with Kim, and the South Koreans actually said, no, please, not at this point of time. That could be a sort of...
What's Kim's reaction going to be to all of this now? I mean, he continues to get financially squeezed, which may open the door for help. The Russians have been accused of helping North Korea. Who knows how China's playing this? What about all that?
That's true, but I think his core focus at this point of time is really ingratiating himself with the South Korean administration, so that at some point of time down the line, he can get some sort of aid from South Korea. He's trying to he might want to restart tours to North Korea, to one scenic mountain place. There's also something called a Kaesong industrial complex where North Korean workers used to work. It's on the border. He would like that restarted because it creates a revenue stream. And it's those sort of things that Kim would like to get restarted, and he knows that these sort of enforcement actions will happen, and he can live.
Well, it sounds like he's trying to drive a stake between the United States and a good ally, South Korea. And there are trade tensions between South Korea and the United States when it comes to steel and aluminum.
Yes.
And so there are some issues there, although you could say the United States is a great ally to South Korea. But it certainly seems that there is a real strategy of divide here going on by Kim Jong-un.
He's probably thinking on those lines, certainly. And one cannot blame him if he is coming and doing good and trying to relax the tensions on the peninsula. One would expect that the U.S. would also be a little bit more facilitative of dialogue. So from that perspective, I don't think there's not a problem with Kim, and rather, in fact, there is creeping tensions in U.S.-South Korea relations, because we just had yesterday, South Korean residential washing machines now being under U.S. tariff safeguards and enforcement remedies, and those things can also create...
We'll have to have you back to talk about that. That is a big economic story. Saurabh Gupta, thank you. Appreciate it.
U.S. sanctions against North Korea keep coming thick and fast. The Treasury Department has announced new punitive measures on 24 entities and individuals linked to Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Now, the move comes as Washington remains deeply concerned about the threats posed by the unpredictable regime. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement on Wednesday that it sanctioned 9 entities, including 2 Chinese firms, 16 North Korean individuals, and 6 North Korean vessels, in order to systematically target those financing the Kim Jong-un regime and its weapons programs. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who was present at the Davos World Economic Forum, added that the U.S. is also targeting quote-unquote illicit actors in China, Russia, and elsewhere, with links to the North's financial networks, calling for their expulsion. The sanctions target Beijing Changsheng Trading and Dandong Jiangsheng Trade, 2 Chinese companies accused of exporting a combined total of more than $68 million worth of goods to North Korea, as well as 5 North Korean shipping companies, 1 North Korean electronics company, and the North Korean Ministry of Crude Oil Industry. Individuals listed include 10 representatives of North's Korea Ryambong General Corporation, which is involved in specializing in the regime's defense acquisition and support of its military-related sales. The latest sanctions come about a month after the Treasury blacklisted 2 senior North Korean officials who are involved in the regime's ballistic missile program, as Washington continues to tighten the screw on Pyongyang amid the increasing threat to the U.S. mainland. Meanwhile, President Trump's National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster continued to stress the seriousness of North Korea's threats, stating that the danger is growing and that the North has become a grave threat to the United States. Calling it a preferred approach to the North Korean weapons issue, the U.S. looks to continue its sanctions on the North, hoping the pressure will force Pyongyang to abandon its weapons programs. 이 승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
It is time for North Korea to realize that the denuclearization is its only acceptable future.
I cannot imagine a condition under which the United States would accept North Korea as a nuclear power.
We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction. We will not be intimidated.
And joining us tonight, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, now Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, Fox Business contributor. Ambassador, good to have you with us. A handful of months before we're going to face precisely that threat.
Well, Mike Pompeo has made a similar point before. He said a few months, and what it says is that after years of presidents and political leaders, Democrat and Republican, saying it's unacceptable for North Korea to get to this point, they are almost at the point. We have failed, and the do bill has come due, leaving it for Trump to make some pretty hard decisions here.
And making it all the more difficult, and this president has acknowledged this, that the Chinese have not been as energetic as he feels they should have been in supporting us, and that in addition to that, Russia is an ally of North Korea.
Yeah, you're being polite here about China. They've jived us for 25 years. They've said we don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, and yet they have done essentially nothing that they have the unique capability to do to stop it. So that's why Trump, when he says it's unacceptable, I take him to mean he will not accept it. And if they are as close as Pompeo says, and I think he's right on target, we've got to make a hard decision about the use of military force. And I think that point's got to be made very clearly to China.
Let's turn to the Justice Department and the FBI. Again, two agents, an agency and a department sworn to preserve the national security, violating law and order, and the Constitution. And denying Congress the fulfillment of its responsibility, which is to oversee those two organizations. This is reprehensible. What do you think can be done the most expediently to preserve evidence and to bring people who are in positions of authority to bay to prevent further corruption?
Yeah. Look, I'm an alumnus of the Justice Department. I've worked with the FBI in a variety of different capacities. When I was at Justice, when I've been at the State Department, I have enormous admiration for the average FBI agent and their work.
The rank and file, this is not an issue. Yeah. The people who lead the Department of Justice and the FBI are corrupt, they're crooked, and they need to be removed forthwith.
The reputation of both institutions is stained, and the stain is spreading. I think the Attorney General has got to act in an extraordinary fashion. I don't think the new director of the FBI gets how serious this is.
He said with a straight face they've been lost.
Yeah, look, Richard Nixon got toasted for 18.5 minutes of lost tapes. Many people have said correctly, if you or a business you were running said, well, we've lost 5 months of emails, you'd be toasted. It's not acceptable. And I just think we need some dramatic leadership. I think somebody's basically got to take control of the FBI
Secure
communications
the evidence.
And before more of it is destroyed, because that's what's happening here.
Ambassador John Bolton, always good to have you
Glad
here.
to be here.
Let me see. Jive and toasted. My lexicon grows.
Diplomatic code words.
Ambassador, we always learn something, and I appreciate it. Ambassador John Bolton.
For a confrontation on the high seas.
It could, although it does have UN authorization. Now, what the UN resolution says is that you can go against commercial vessels, not against state vessels. So these are not North Korean vessels, North Korean state vessels, and they have the right to interdict these vessels.
Transfers or dealings with North Korean ships, 16 individuals and 9 companies. The United States is accusing them of helping Kim Jong-un's weapons program. Joining me for more on this is Surabh Gupta, a policy specialist for the Institute of China-America Studies. Surabh, nice to have you with us.
Of course, most of the interdiction has been happening at ports, but they're doing it at the high seas also now.
The fact that individuals, 16 individuals are being pointed out, taking action against them is an indictment. I don't know how else you could look at it. This is kind of a new level of sanctions now. The United States announced a new round of sanctions against North Korea today. The sanctions will block any You surprised by these sanctions, this move?
No, I'm not. They've been going against anybody and everybody who's been trying to aid North Korea. The enforcement has been really bolstered, including maritime interdiction and any ship-to-ship transfers. So I think this is not a surprise at all.
Is this begging